he's 2 to 3 years ahead of the other kids. That's one thing. He said that's really to be expected. Put 1-2 hours a day in with your kids, teaching them one-on-one or one-on-two or whatever, and you can really expect that. That's not like a phenomenal outcome.
For the father, although the emotions can be there, I think the more primary objective is the teaching and the kind of mannerisms, the role modeling, that sort of stuff needs to be there from the father.
Right, what you're seeing.
Did you make that right now whilst we were speaking?
No, I made it a while ago for another joke, but I found it again. I thought it'd be relevant.
Wait, is this this is a movie, Daddy Daycare? Okay.
Yeah,
which actor is it?
Face onto it. I think it's Eddie
Ice
Murphy.
Cube. Oh, okay.
No, Eddie Murphy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 kids on top of him there.
This is you in the future, yeah?
Yeah, and a pet dog.
Oh.
Why not? We're a comedy cast now, bro.
The recent episode, who said it was funny and that was a good thing?
I did. I rewatched it.
I know,
on
you,
my way.
yeah, okay.
I rewatched it while we were driving and I was bursting out laughing.
Yeah, I know you enjoyed it, okay, which is a good sign.
MashaAllah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Okay, I feel like quite a while since we had a guest. This episode we've got Shoayb on. Assalamu alaikum, Shoayb.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. How are you?
And good, alhamdulillah. Great. You can see I've got a bit of makeup on today, you know, just with the whole theme of the month kind of thing.
Whoa.
And yeah, man. So you've got a podcast, which
Yep.
automatically makes you more interesting, which is why we bring you on. You know, that's a cool thing about podcasts, right? It's like, oh, we got a podcast. It's like the old version of the new version of I've got a book, and then all of a sudden you're more interesting, mashallah.
Yeah.
But I think your podcast is called Dadhood, right? And I just feel like automatically by you putting that stamp in the ground saying Dadhood, it means you're taking an extra interest in an area, which means you probably have observations that I might not have, right? So that does make you special in that way, I feel. Why don't you tell me, why did you even start the podcast?
Bismillah. So I started the podcast because, first of all, when my wife was pregnant and my child was coming, I was looking for content online from other Muslim dads that could talk about their experiences so I could learn from it, because obviously it's a brand new thing. And I didn't see much. And the only content that I did see was from non-Muslims and mainly kind of white men from America, which I'm not going to relate to at all. Obviously, there's certain things in the pregnancy process that are like 100%, like you can't change. There's a fact. But there's obviously certain experiences that you want to make sure culturally line up with you, belief-wise, mindset-wise line up with you. And I wasn't finding any of that. So I thought, there must be other people that were looking for that kind of stuff. So I decided that maybe I could be that person. I could benefit other people. That's one reason. The other reason is I just feel very passionate about fatherhood because I didn't grow up with my father. And so it's kind of left something with me, maybe some sort of gap that I'm trying to fill, and I want to sort of express that as much as I can. And I've seen that there are other brothers like me that haven't grown up with their father, and they find this topic of being a father quite difficult, and they don't see themselves in that light, or they feel scared about becoming a father. And so I thought because of that as well, it's kind of quite a powerful reason as to why I wanted to speak about the topic. Yeah.
Would you say you're scared when you were scared or worried about it, like when your wife's pregnant?
I'm not going to say scared or worried. I would say that I was just looking for some sort of comfort in other people's experiences.
Right.
But I don't think it was like I was like searching around like, I don't know what's gonna happen, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I think you're as a man, you're gonna have to have some sort of confidence in that field. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're not confident at all, then there's something going on that you need to address. So I think there has to be a level of confidence you already have, but there can be like additional things that you're not sure about that you want to find out. And I think that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, I don't know if I remember looking up stuff around like fatherhood or like when the baby's born, when the baby wasn't born yet. It's more like when the baby came, then maybe there were certain things that like, you know, when you're actually dealing with it, then I looked it up at that time. But I think I just had it in my head constantly, like before the baby was born, like this is something millions of people are going through. Like, I don't know, every month there are probably millions of babies born, right? So it's like, it's very normal, standard part of the, you know, human experience. So should be fine kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. I think I spoke to a lot of people when I was trying to ask them, like, how did you feel during that time? And they said the same thing that you said. It was almost like, as things go along, if you want to find something, you try and find it out, but it's not like you're preempting this kind of craziness.
Craziness, yeah. What about you, Muhammad?
I suppose you got to rationalize it, don't you?
You're a
Not
spontaneous
worry too
kind of
much.
guy.
Bro, I just thought, hey, kids, just like you, kids come, they'll be fine. Everybody does it. This fatherhood thing in me would just turn on. It doesn't actually turn on. You just end up like, you know, you suddenly got it, and you're like, oh, I still feel exactly the same as I did yesterday.
Did you feel like that? Yeah, like no. Did you like, you know, sometimes I probably find YouTube videos of these things, you know, like when the baby's born and then the man holds his baby the first time, he starts crying, and I was not that like.
I cried my eyes out.
You did, yeah? Okay.
I was like, "Ah," and I called up my grand in Morocco, and I was like,
really? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
No
bro, I was
way. I
emotional
didn't
wreck,
expect
bro.
that from you, bro.
Oh man, I'm a softie, really.
Yeah.
I was
What
laughing
about
at
you,
first.
Shoayb? What was it like when?
For me, it felt surreal, like in the moment when, you know, the baby has come out now, and your wife's holding it, and you're there looking down, and you're like, okay, there's actually this human being here. It feels surreal, but it wasn't like an overwhelming emotion, like you said. Like, it wasn't like I'm crying now and whatnot.
Wow.
I think when we got home, it was more like, okay, my life is starting now. Like, once baby got home and the wife got home and stuff, it's like, okay, let's go for it. But I think also through the whole pregnancy process, I had time to kind of deep it, because it wasn't really planned for us. Like, alhamdulillah, it came, and we had to sort of really plan around a lot of things. Like, when my wife had to drop out of university, she was at university at the time, she felt she couldn't carry on because of, like, there was a lot of stress. She wasn't handling it very well. We weren't living together at the time as well, so then we had to find a place to move in together so I could take care of her. So there was a lot of changes that had already occurred during that process, so I guess that was just kind of a continuation of it. So maybe that's why it wasn't like a big emotion like Muhammad, but it doesn't mean that I was devoid of any love towards my son.
Yeah. I remember just thinking like, whoa, like that's small. Like that, like humans get this small. I think that might reflect my experience with like seeing kids, you know, because it's not like my siblings or this and that. I didn't, you know, have a big experience of holding kids, babies, this and that. So that was quite new, I think, that side of things.
Look at that toxic masculinity. You're like a gorilla in the jungle who's just had a litter and walked off. There's no emotion there.
I'll tell you something,
that's a small baby. Carry on with my day.
No, yeah, like, especially at the time, I was very tired because I think the baby was born maybe at like 6 a.m. and I didn't sleep that whole night, so that might have contributed.
You were tired, bro. Your poor wife.
I don't think you want your wife to
Obviously,
hear that.
my wife had plenty of emotions without being tired, Yani. But
yeah, I always tell my wife that I was so tired during that night. It's the truth, I was. But obviously, like,
yeah.
I try and tease her about it because, you know, there's always these memes about like dads having to sit in these hard chairs in the pregnancy.
I wasn't even saying it like that. I was just saying that I was kind of in zombie mode. That's what I mean. So that's why I didn't get much of a reaction out of me. But I just had a baby, alhamdulillah, a few months ago, and I don't feel much connection with the baby or much yani, emotional involvement until like with my first son. It was only when he's like more able to like do stuff or maybe say stuff that's when I feel like, okay, now I actually like, I can get more involved. That's really what I feel, you know. What about you guys?
No, mine was opposite. I think when the baby was small, I did struggle to understand how I can create a bond, because obviously majority of the time baby is with the mother, breastfeeding, sleeping, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So you don't get much time, but the time that you do get, I did find it quite special. Like I tried to force my way in. Like I told my wife I'm gonna be changing the nappy so I can get some time in there, or I'm gonna try and put him to sleep, or I'm gonna, sometimes she wouldn't like that I held him, because there's like this kind of theory, like the less you hold your baby, the less they need you to fall asleep and all that kind of stuff. But I
Oh,
was like, I
yeah.
don't care about all of that. I'll rather hold him and cuddle him and all sorts of things. So I did kind of force my way in there, and I think that was to my advantage, because I did feel that sort of bond and that connection even before he started talking and walking.
Maybe it's like a commitment thing. Like the more you commit to, investment, the more, obviously the mother invests so much in the baby, like even before it's born. And then after the baby's born, like she's feeding him, she's this. And so she's invested so much, and that's going to automatically, just that alone would create a bond, isn't it? So as a father, like if you invest time in like putting baby to sleep or this, like you're getting more invested, aren't you?
Yeah, 100%. And I always advise people to do that as well. Like I advise them, like when your wife is pregnant, do what you can to, even when the baby's in the womb, whether that's reciting Quran, or whether that's, like maybe giving your wife a massage and stuff like that. That touch, the baby can still recognize it. Like there's a lot of studies done on it where the baby still recognizes your voice and your touch and stuff. So I do recommend brothers to do that, because this is a common thing. Like, I'm not bonding with my child. Only when he's a toddler do I begin to bond with him or her. So if you can start it earlier, it's going to be to your advantage.
What are you saying, Muhammad?
Oh, I said, have you got boys as well, Shoayb?
Yeah, I've got one boy and one girl. Oldest one is boy and the youngest one's a girl.
No bad. Yeah, I suppose for me and Amin, we always have that boy bias, where we don't know. Well, maybe we're a bit more. Maybe you're a bit more cold, aren't you? I mean, just.
I think it's your North African heritage coming out there. It's just cold men, cold fathers.
Yeah, Suleiman fell over the other day. I just looked at him. I was like, "Come on, get up."
Yeah.
No, I don't know how I'd be with a girl, bro. I think I would.
You have to have that to an extent. Like you can't be coddling your children, and you have to also like. As a man, you're not gonna fall into your emotions like, to that level where you're always gonna find every moment cute, and you're gonna find every moment that I need to like be there and cuddle and kiss and all that kind of stuff. There's gonna be times when you're gonna do that, but as a man, you don't really invest into your emotions as much as maybe the mothers do. So I think it's natural to have a bit of sternness, and that's probably to your advantage as a father, because you have to. If the mother can't be stern, then you're gonna have to be the one that is stern later in life when they start acting up and stuff. So
I feel like that's straight up my responsibility, right? Like that's part of the role. And like you're saying, like because you grew up without your dad around, so you would know this better than me, maybe, or you would realize or observe it that there are certain things only a father's going to give you usually. Or maybe if not your father, maybe if you had like uncles or whatever around, they could do it as well. But I just fully like I feel very aware of that, and so I'm like, okay, this type of thing, my wife would never do that, so I must do it, right? Because the child needs that. So yeah, what would you say, Shoayb? Like, you probably thought about this a lot. Like, what's the role of the father versus the mother? Like, what's the father's role like different to the mother?
I think in terms of the similarities, first of all, you both have Islamically an obligation to nurture your child. I think sometimes culture gets in the way, and there's certain cultures, even my culture, Pakistani culture, where the father's not really meant to be involved in the nurturing; he's just there for the providing. And Islamically, that's actually wrong, because if you look at the dua that children make for their parents, that Allah have mercy on them because they raised me when I was young, it uses the dual, the Arabic kind of dual.
Rabbayani.
Rabbayani, exactly. It means that both of them have to be involved, basically, and both of them are supposed to be nurturing the child. So there's no difference, but then how the nurturing happens can differ. It doesn't mean that the time has to be equal. It doesn't mean the type of nurturing has to be equal. And I think for the mother, the type of nurturing is obviously going to be more on the emotional care side of things, and a lot more on the sort of nurturing, the love and the care, the emotions, that sort of bond. Basically, I think that's going to come a lot more from the mother, naturally, because they've had that sort of you could say intangible sort of connection when the child was in the womb. They already felt that connection, even though before they could even hold the child. So they already have that sort of emotional thing there. Whereas for the father, although the emotions can be there, I think the more primary objective is the teaching, and the kind of mannerisms, the role modeling. That sort of stuff needs to be there from the father. Again, you have another ayah in the Quran. Allah says that save yourselves and your family from the fire. So meaning that, how do you save yourself from the fire? First of all, scholars say that it needs to be through knowledge. Like, you need to understand the deen, and then you need to start implementing it. So obviously, if you're going to do that to yourself, you're going to learn about the deen, you're going to pass that over to your children. And if you're going to implement the deen in your character, you're going to pass that kind of akhlaq and that character to your children. So I think that's where the main difference is. But I think it's very fluid anyway. I don't think there's any hard line thing in Islam to say that the mother should only do this and the father should only do this. I think it is left quite open, and obviously Islam is a deen of the fitrah, so you kind of look at what is natural to you in your situation. Islam also encourages looking at the cultural norms of society, so what works for you guys in the moment right there and then. For me personally, I guess maybe not a personal thing, but one thing that Islam does encourage is that the man has a responsibility to bring in the funds, and that in the hadith about those who are shepherds, everybody is a shepherd. That one of the things that's mentioned about the woman is that she's shepherd of a household. And so you kind of have this sort of split, which is, okay, the man goes out to earn and the woman takes care of the household. So in that sense, what would happen is the mother is spending a lot more time with the children within the household, and the man is showing that he's bringing provisions to the household, and then in all of that, the kind of different aspects of nurturing and educating and akhlaq building and all of that is going on. And I think that's pretty much my case, because my wife doesn't work and I work, and so at the moment we're not going to be sending our son to school. That's the decision at the moment, but he's not of that age anyway. But
Okay.
you can tell from that the idea is like, my wife wants to take care of the children and to nurture them at home, and I'm going to continue working, and when I get that time, I'm going to be doing that nurturing for them as well.
Yeah, and naturally, with that setup, which is like, you could say, traditional setup, with that setup, the role you're playing as a father, like you mentioned, is role model. Okay, so although you're not with the children, you're modeling for them that you take care of that responsibility. You go out and you do some sort of, what they might not know, is a bit abstract to them, but they know you're going and doing something important, right? And you're modeling for them that you give that the importance, that you go out every day to do that, etc., etc. You have the discipline and this and all of that, right? So that's one aspect. The other aspect that I see is, because I'm going to be out way more than my wife is out, I take the responsibility to kind of show my son the outer world, if you like, right? Like if he's gonna be kind of streetwise and be on the ball and this and that, and even just be mature and know how to mix with different people, that's going to be through me. That's how I see it. So I have to take him out. Like just yesterday, I think, or the day before, I met up with some friends. I brought him along. I try and bring him. I want him to see different environments, different people, people of different ages. I don't want him to be at home with the mom and then the only time he goes out is like to meet with other kids like his age or whatever. Like, I want him to meet different people, and I feel like that's 50% of the education. There's the education of like maths and English, and there's the education of go outside, see how things work, right? So I consider that a big thing. Like anything outside, like, it's pretty much up to me kind of to do. And I think my wife automatically sees the same with me on that, maybe because of how she was raised as well. So we model our parents a lot, right?
I agree with that. I thought Muhammad was going to say something, so I just wait
No,
for
I
him to jump.
I also agree. I think I'm interested in your sort of decision to homeschool. I'm assuming that's what you're going to do.
Yeah,
If you're
yeah.
not going to, yeah. How old is your eldest then?
He's 3.5.
Oh, early, bro. Early
Very
days.
early. Very early.
Yeah, yeah.
You'd be surprised. I mean, my son went to school, I think, at 4. Yeah, 4 years old. He's 5 now, so he's just finishing reception. Bro, I was sat here earlier, right? And he's got this thing on the computer called like Math Seeds or something. It's some sort of maths thing that he likes to play. It's games, but it's all math stuff. And I was just observing him from a distance, and all these equations are coming up, and he's just answering them, all of them right. Like,
Wow.
what's this plus this? Boom.
Right,
What's this
bro.
plus it? And then he just turns around and starts cheering when he gets it all right. I was absolutely gobsmacked, bro. And I just showed me, like, if I was homeschooling, like, look at the capacity which they're able to learn. Like, obviously, you're competing with a professional, right? So you're going to do that homeschooling thing, but the teachers are professional teachers, I suppose. Yes, there's positives, negatives and stuff. But then I just thought, I had that bit of anxiety. I was like, if I was to homeschool him, would I be able to teach him to the level that he's just been taught now? You know? So I was really amazed. I was absolutely amazed with his level at, 5 years old. No pressure, Shoayb. But I'm sure that's probably a concern for a lot of people that are thinking about homeschooling.
No, it is. I mean, we're quite back and forth. I mean, we've recently gone back into the domain of homeschool, but it's really over the past year or so of discussing this. We've been very, very back and forth. There's been times where we're like, no, 100% going to school. Other times, 100% going homeschooling. At the moment, we're kind of like 90% on the homeschooling. It might change again, and the reason is because we can't really get down to where we think the definite pros and cons are. And I think it's really because it depends on your own situation at the time, because it could be down to time, right? Like, do you as a mother and father have enough time to give to your children so that they can have that level of education, or do you think that, okay, however much you do is enough because there's too many cons sending them to school? And we went really, really back and forth with it. I mean, one of the things that we are like very, very sure on is like sending them to secondary school is a big no-no for us. Obviously, that's way into the future and we can't plan for it. And I don't think it's a good idea to plan things so long into the future because you never know what's going to happen. But just reflecting upon it, we felt like secondary school is like the place where it was really difficult. Even for me and my wife, look at our own situations. Although we came out like, okay, we're practicing Muslims and whatnot, I don't think that's the measurement to use. You should look at, in that situation, when you were in high school, what kind of madness were you getting up to? What kind of influences were around you? And you don't know whether your son and your daughter is going to come out of that unscathed like you did or not.
Yeah.
I think in primary school, however, there's a lot less risk. There is continually gradually more risk with some of the things that we're seeing being taught at primary school level, but there's still considerably less risk compared to secondary school. And so we were kind of saying, all right, if we did send them to school, it would be for primary school. And that would be the advantage to that is only because we wanted more time to maybe build up our finances, have more time to be able to do what we need to do in terms of financial security, so that when it does come to secondary school, we're a bit more free and we're a bit more able to give time to our children. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. Have you guys been thinking about homeschooling as well? Have you had like similar discussions with your partners?
Yeah. I'm pretty much, I would say I'm 98% on decided not to send my kids to school at all. It doesn't mean that because maybe the default people would think is if you're not going to send them to school, it means you're going to homeschool them, and that what that looks like is like the mum teaching them at home. It doesn't have to be like that, right? It's obviously the mum teaching a bit, the dad teaching a bit, getting tutors. You could even create a micro school where you have like 5 kids and 1 teacher. Because I think just logically, like a big reason that things don't always work out as well as they could do at school is because you have 1 teacher and 25, 30 kids. Like that alone is a huge factor. Just the fact that you're doing one-on-one changes everything, really. So yeah, I've probably been thinking about it before I was even married, to be honest. I'm just interested in like how we learn and stuff. I hesitate to even say this, but I'm a qualified teacher. So I've seen, like, I've taught and stuff, and I seen how schools work and all that. I've thought about it, I suppose, a lot.
Oh,
Oh,
The
Spooky.
electricity go.
I think there's sensors in the room that I'm in. Let me see what I can do here.
Okay. Shoaib's lights have gone out for the audio listeners.
That was spooky, bro. He's about to tell me some gin stories.
Bro, I was thinking, like, because I'm like in Turkey, I'm thinking, yeah, they lost electricity. Surprisingly, we lose electricity here like a few times a year.
All right, that was like I was back in Pakistan, man. Like,
Yeah, bro. So I'm pretty much fully on the homeschool thing or micro school thing or one of those kind of things, one of those kind of setups. And it's not just from the avoiding the problems that you might find in school. Obviously, I don't live in the UK, but you would find certain issues even in Turkey and stuff. But it's also the learning and the quality of learning and the development, right? Like we're talking about Rabbi yarhamhuma kama rabbayani. That comes from terbiyah. Terbiyah is not just like learning maths and English. It's learning life skills. It's learning character traits, developing your whatever, control over your anger, whatever it is, right? And I feel like school is so limited in that way as well. So also my understanding from talking to friends who do homeschooling, they've done homeschooling. Like one of my friends, he's got a 6 and an 8-year-old, and he's saying that the 8-year-old is about, he's in school now, just to learn like the Turkish language. He said his son is 2 to 3 years ahead of all the other kids just because he was learning, like, I don't want to say learning basic maths. He's doing 1 to 2 hours a day with his mum learning. That's it. And he's 2 to 3 years ahead of the other kids. Yeah.
that's amazing.
That's one thing. And he said that's really to be expected. Put 1-2 hours a day in with your kids, teaching them 1-on-1 or 1-on-2 or whatever. And you can really expect that. That's not like a phenomenal outcome. Like he's like, my wife kind of hates it. Like it's not like she's passionate about it kind of thing, but she's still able to achieve that result. And then another person I know, he like I get inspired by him in another way where he, in Saudi, this is where Saudi, I guess, very safe. He actually lets his kids roam a lot. He lets them play outside a lot. He gives them a lot of freedom, just do whatever you will get up to, Yani, you know? Them, like, I think his eldest is like 11 or 12, and he's very mature, you know? And he gets stuff done. He'll go and he just told me he goes and haggles on behalf of his like mom and sister and stuff, you know? So he's really got his head screwed on. So those kind of two examples that I come to mind in terms of like the benefits of that potential like way of doing things.
100% agree with that, bro. That's some of the things that me and my wife were discussing. It's not just about the educating in terms of the subjects and sitting down and learning those things. That there's so much more that you just can't get from school, and you want to make sure that you yourself as a parent, those other things in terms of character development, being outdoors, etc., you as a parent are teaching them those things, that they're actually learning that from you, because you're supposed to be their main role model, and so you want to make sure you pass that over to them. And that's some of the things that we are seeing, that obviously school is definitely lacking. If you just give them that one-to-one attention, it could, they could really flourish. And you see this from certain studies, homeschooling studies as well, that those kids that were homeschooled, because they had that one-to-one attention, they came out of that at a much higher level in terms of even their academics than other children. But I guess the thing which a lot of people look down upon when it comes to that is like, okay, but then what about the socializing? Like, think about your own time being at school. So some of the best friends that you had were when you were at school, and the friendships that you made at school. So how are they supposed to make that outside of school? And I think I'm still struggling to answer that. But one thing that I heard a scholar, actually I wouldn't say a scholar, but an ustad saying, is that they don't need to socialize that much at that age. like there is no advantage. He says that he's read psychological studies. I didn't look into it, but he said that there is no advantage from what he can see through the science of children in that young age, sort of, below sort of 16 or below teenage years, to socialize every single day with kids of their age. In fact, it'll probably have a negative effect in the sense that they're gonna learn more about their manners and their likes and their dislikes from kids that are their age rather than those who are older than them and have more life experience and knowledge than them. I thought that was quite an interesting perspective.
Mhm.
And there was another this one I could say is a scholar. I'm not going to say a name, but he done a course on Adab al-Mufrad, which is Imam Bukhari's book on manners, basically. And he in part of that he talks about homeschooling, and he basically says that no matter where you send them, whether it's going to be homeschooling or schooling, you always, as a parent, have to be on a level 10, from 0 to 10, a level 10 of fear for your children. So,
Mm.
meaning that if you send them to school, when they come back home, you're checking what did you learn, who did you hang out with, what did you do today, what did you like, what did you dislike. And the same thing happens even if they're homeschooling. You're evaluating all of those points during their
Mm.
homeschooling. And even if, let's say, in the middle, you're going to send them to Islamic school, the same thing. You can't just say that, okay, now I've sent them to Islamic school, I don't need to find out what did they learn and what did they like, what did they dislike, because I assume that they're in a good
Mm.
environment. Saying no, any time, any sort of education you're giving them has to be on a level 10 of fear. You have to always be involved.
And even with the Islamic education, it's like you could benefit them further by, let's say they learnt, I don't know, what sort of Fatiha means, for example. You can then have a deeper discussion with them about that, right? You can take it further that maybe it's not possible to do when you have a class of 20 kids or whatever. So you can like basically develop their critical thinking and help them even to learn how to do like ta'ammul, like pondering even, just by really conversation, just walking somewhere and talk to them about it at the park, talk to them about it in the car, So
I wonder how much of that energy for homeschooling would exist if there wasn't all the issues that we have in public schools these days. Because I feel like I always, like, when I talk about homeschooling, similar to what you guys are doing, I'm like, oh yeah, the benefits, and there's this and there's that and there's this. But actually, really, the elephant in the room is that I'm only saying that because of the issues in public schools as opposed to the benefits. Because I feel like if I was near a Muslim school, for example, I would be sending them there. Do you understand what I mean? And I wouldn't really think twice of it. Maybe that's because of the pressures of growing up of, very dominant father figures telling me school, university, degree. Do you know what I mean? And now we're going, it's almost like our generation's just bouncing to the other side of the spectrum completely. Like, I've always wondered, like, obviously my dad's not here anymore, but I always wondered if I ever approached my dad about this, he'd probably beat me up. Do you know what I mean?
He'd be like, school straight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But,
My mom says
earlier,
the same thing.
Earlier you mentioned about how you wouldn't want them going to secondary, but you were less fearful about. For me, it was the other way around, bro.
Okay.
And I did I share? I mean, the thing that happened to me and Suleiman at school, or did I just tweet about it? I don't know if I mentioned it on Mind Heist.
I don't think you did on the podcast.
Well, I'll mention it on the podcast because it kind of frames why I was more fearful. So you hear about all these like horror stories of like kids saying stuff at school and then parents getting dragged in to answer some questions about. So that pretty much happened to me like a few weeks ago, on a low level. But essentially, the teacher of the school like approached my wife when she was picking him up from school, and she was just like, "Oh, I have some concerns. I want to chat to you about some stuff." My wife was really like shocked, like, "What's going on?" She was like, "Oh, Suleiman, he's been talking a lot about shooting and saying that his dad shoots him, and then he plays with TNT and he likes explosions and all this stuff, and then his dad whacked him with a spoon, blah blah blah, and I'm just a bit concerned and all this stuff." My wife was like absolutely mortified, bro. Like, why are they putting us on the spot like this? Like, what's wrong, right? So I was a bit pissed off, to be honest. And then I already knew exactly what all of that was in context. So I went the next day and I spoke to the teacher, and I was like, "Look, as far as shooting is concerned, he got some Nerf guns for Eid. The Nerf guns that they sell at the mall, the ones that all the kids buy. Yeah, we were playing, whatever Nerf shooting games with it. That's answer to question one. Question two, he plays Minecraft all the time. well, on the weekends at least. And he builds stuff and he likes to blow it up with TNT. The most popular video game on the planet, the one that all the kids play. That's what he was playing. So if a kid's talking about TNT, I don't know, maybe think about it. You've got a class full of kids. And then what was the last thing? Oh yeah, something about a spoon. We're playing like sword fights with wooden spoons, and I bonked him on the head out of play, and he went on, opened his big mouth, didn't he, to the teacher? but it just, that was the fear. It was like, whoa, he's got a big mouth, not because of it in a negative way, but he just shares things, and depending on your background and where you're from and what kind of makeup you have at the school, they're gonna just assume certain things, but possibly in a negative light. And
if his name was Samuel and not Suleiman, and his dad was white, it would never have been an issue.
Oh, absolutely. And that was the thing. It was like, but the biggest thing, bro, was that it absolutely, like, I don't know, for that week, it felt like it destroyed my relationship with my son. And I kid you not, like the next morning, he was sat with me and I just felt like I couldn't talk to him. I couldn't freely discuss anything with him. I couldn't play the games. It literally, I suddenly felt like my son wasn't mine. I swear to God. Not because he's done anything wrong, but because I was so cautious. Like, subhanAllah, what if they referred me to some organization? Were they going to take my kids away? What's happened? Like, all of this sort of stuff. It was absolutely dreadful. Wallahi al-azim, it was absolutely dreadful. And then I realized, like, look, if he was a bit older, I could explain things to him. I could teach him what we're about. Like, kids will say stuff, bro. Suleiman, we'll teach him about, Jannah, for example. Teach him about doing good deeds, getting Jannah points. We'll teach him about, well, this is why we pray and this is why we do certain things, right? Now, deliberately, because of this environment, I've refrained from teaching him about Jahannam. I've refrained from teaching him about, like, if I speak about non-Muslims, I won't say they're bad and we're good. I'll say this is what we do and this is what they do. You're Muslim, so you do this, and they're not Muslim, so they do that. But because he's a child making sense of the world, randomly in the back of the car, he'll say, those people are enemies. They don't pray, so they are enemies. I was like, Suleiman, I didn't teach you that. Why are you saying that? If he goes and says that in school, bro,
your kid's
it's finished. It's finished, bro. And you know what? I'm not the only one. My friend messaged me the other day, and his daughter, same age as Suleiman, maybe a bit younger, right? She said the same exact thing. She said, oh, you're a bad person because you don't pray. The bad people don't pray. Even though that's not what he's taught her, but that's kids making sense of the world and maybe a bit of their fitrah, right?
They see things quite in a black and white way, right?
Yeah, they see, you're either part of the team or you're not. Do you know what I mean? So if that's it's kids and their big mouths, that really terrifies me. But can you see, you're just walking around eggshells if you haven't got that kind of controlled environment you can teach your kids in. So it's terrifying. Whilst on the opposite side, when they're older, you could just be like, hey, don't say that when you go to school. And they'd be like, okay, well. And this is why you don't say that, because I can show you, videos of kids being taken away or whatever. So
depends what you're fearful of, I guess. You have different things to fear in different age groups.
Well, this is what Shoayb said, having that level 10 fear at all stages. But that's it, isn't it?
I never even thought about it from that perspective. And I think because you've got that kind of one-to-one or whatever you call it, first-hand experience, it's you're able to see in that light. I'm just like theorizing, right? If I send my child to primary school, this may happen, this may not happen. If I send them to secondary school, this may happen, may not happen. Which is why I'm always open to changing anyway. Like, I'm just making decisions now based on reflections that me and my wife are having, and I don't think anybody should get married to their decisions. They should always look at what's happening at that time, what are your circumstances and how things going to change. And I 100% don't think that there is one right way of going about this whole kind of schooling or educating and whatnot. I think it really, really does depend on the situation that you're in. And as long as you can stick to that 10 level of fear and you can always making sure that you're making the most of any situation that you're putting them in, then you'll get the best out of it. It's like when people say, should I start a business or should I go to university? It's like any one of them is going to be good for you as long as you do the right thing once you make that decision. If you give it your all, like if you choose to go for university, then do it properly, pass your exams, have a career plan in mind for when you graduate, etc., etc. If you're going to do business, then know, how much money do you have? Where do you want to go with it? What's your vision with it? Who you're going to partner up with, etc., etc. As long as you do it properly, then you're gonna reach that kind of end success that you want, regardless.
One thing with homeschooling is, like you said, the social aspect or the character development aspect. If you're, like, for example, if both parents are working, that's going to be difficult, right? You know, I actually watched this live stream that Tim Humble did. Maybe you saw it, Shoayb. I watched that, and he was even suggesting ways where even if both parents are working, you could still make it happen, right? But with the social aspect, a lot of people don't even have the time where they could take their kids all around. So those are the kind of things, like that's where like being self-employed is really helpful, where it's like, okay, in the middle of the day you could take them somewhere or this or that. Like ultimately, that was a reason. Like I was often thinking about having a business when I was older and when I have kids. It's because I was thinking, I need to spend more time with my kids. I need to have that, time to give them, kind of thing.
That's one of my reasons as well for like I made a plan for myself when Isa, my oldest, was like 1.5 or 2 years old. I said to myself, I can't imagine being able to successfully homeschool my children if I don't have more time with them. If I'm still gonna be working 40 hours a week, probably more, to be honest. I always work more than 40 hours.
Mashallah,
that's what happened. No,
they're listening,
because I want to. I don't even want to. This is the issue, like when you're working for somebody else, you get dragged into projects that you don't want to do, and you have the responsibility of completing them. And you kind of can't get out of having to work extra. And I said to myself, I'm going to continue that kind of lifestyle, I'm not going to be able to do the homeschooling to the level I want to do it. And it's not really down to the finances. Like when they're younger, you don't even need to, like you were saying, Muhammad al-Sharif does these amazing things. You don't even need to spend so much money. When they're younger, maybe when they're teenagers and stuff, you need to like up the ante and do a lot more, maybe more traveling, etc. But when they're younger, really it's just about making sure you have enough time with them. A lot of the resources that you can use can be free. Museums are free. Going to the farms, it doesn't cost much. Printing things out, going down to the park and exploring things, and making up a syllabus while you're outside. They don't cost much, but it's the time. And so I said to myself, by the time they're like, Issa's 5 years old, I need to have created another stream of income. Even if I'm still working, I don't have to work that many hours, and there's another stream of income that I can rely upon, and that means I have a lot more time available to me. I think it is definitely, if you're thinking about homeschooling, you do definitely need to think about the timing aspect. I know Ustad Tin Humble said that both parents are working can be done, but it's going to be very difficult.
I mean, he's on one side of the spectrum when it comes to homeschooling. He's like really for it.
He's like, it's wajib.
Yeah. He did say that, isn't it? He said, I believe it's haram to put your kids in public school in the UK.
He said specifically in the West, Yeah,
man. Actually, Muhammad,
how do you feel about that? Your kids in school.
I know.
Ustad Tim Humble's just come for your neck, bro.
Yeah, bro, he has. Bro, listen, it's on site now, isn't it? He's going to refute me as soon as he sees me. No, to be honest, I appreciate that, and I think that's needed. I think especially in certain situations it's needed. I think some of the stuff that we are terrified of, such as, the PSHE stuff and all of that stuff, there are things in place still. Like the wheels haven't fully come off. Like, for example, at our school, they will send us the curriculum prior, and there's always the option to opt out of those certain courses, certain lessons. Like the lesson plans that they're teaching my son at the moment, they're okay. Some of the stuff is very mild. Some of it is, at 4 or 5 years old, it's like, okay, what's your personal boundaries? Where's your private areas that no one's allowed to touch? Like that kind of stuff. And I'm like, hey, that's relevant. Do you know what I mean? Like that, I don't mind him teaching him that. I teach him that as well. Do you understand? Like we've got concepts in our house of like, he's a kid, so he's going to have accidents and he's going to have mistakes and bathroom issues and stuff. But we'll have it like, if I'm washing him, then my wife is nowhere near him. Do you understand? So he knows that she doesn't need to see him because there's no purpose for that. If she's washing him, likewise. For example, I came home from work one day. He was in the toilet. My wife was washing him. The door was slightly open. He saw me look in, and he goes, "Baba, don't look. It's Abe." Meaning, like, it's shameful. Don't look. Do you understand? And I'm like, In my head, I'm like, that's really cool. Like,
That's
smart
my
that he
boy.
identified. That's my boy. Because in an hour's time, I could be washing him and he wouldn't have an issue. So he's clearly made a distinction here. If you don't need to be here, you don't need to be here, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I'm available, I'm the only one available. He might call me and say, "Oh, Baba, can you help me?" And that's fine. So the kids are developing this sort of haya, and a lot of it is fitra anyway. You're just reinforcing fitra, so it's not necessarily the most difficult thing in the world. It's only when that fitra is harshly and severely challenged and deviated from that you're going to have an issue. But a lot of this stuff is just very, very natural. Little things like I'm sure you guys have had it. You're getting changed in your room, and you could just be putting a t-shirt on or something, and trying to tell them, "Don't come into the room, don't just walk straight in, knock or whatever." That can be quite hard, especially when you've got a little one that doesn't even listen, and he's just running around like crazy. But no, it's important. Like, and going back to briefly what you said about just doing activities and stuff. Like yesterday, I took them out, bro. We had such a nice time, man. It was really easy, low cost like time, like, and it was all spontaneous. It was a Sunday. I hadn't been to a car boot sale in years and years. I took my son with me, took the family with me, and like I realized, this is the first time he's ever been to a car boot sale. Stuck him on my shoulders so he can see everything. And he was just like looking at stuff, identifying stuff. We said what we wanted. We needed a vase and we needed like a new mug or something. So his responsibility was to try and spot stuff.
Yeah.
Or he's got like eyesight of a hawk. So when he found something that actually I was looking for a long time, and he was so proud of himself. Like, he was so excited, he just wanted to go home and enjoy this very mundane thing that otherwise he wouldn't have been interested in. But because he's the one that had the responsibility and found it, he was very proud of it. And then we went to a library, same thing, like looking for books and stuff. Libraries are quite unique experiences for kids because they don't necessarily do that anymore. But because there was a sense of physical ownership of that situation, he was very happy about it. And bro, at the end of the day, like, what I keep telling myself is, I reminisce about my father now, like daily, hourly, minutely, and I realize now that these moments that I'm making with my son are the same moments he'll reminisce about, just like I am right now. Yeah, I mean, look, I picked up one of his books, bro. Like, this is just cool, like, just to look at. Like, that's just him trying to write stuff. It just shows you how rapidly they're growing. And I look at that and I'm like, dude, I remember having drawings like this. Like, suddenly he is living in my nostalgia, if you know what I mean. Like, this is his childhood. You all have memories of your childhood, and my son is in his.
It's
and
being
your kids
made
are in
now.
theirs. It's being made now. So the paradox I have, Shoayb, is when you said earlier, making a different stream of income. I say that to myself all the time. I come home from work, I sit down, I go on Photoshop, I try and up my graphic design. My son's pulling at me, play with me. I'm like, no, I need to make another stream of income. Do you understand what I mean? But then I'm in that paradox of like, well, this is his childhood right now. It might take me another 5 years to get that, secure stream of income. By then it'll be too late, and he'll be 10 years old and he'll be doing his own thing and not be interested. So it's like that extreme paradox of all the time, like, am I missing out on my son because I'm thinking too much of the future? But if I don't think about the future now, then how am I going to homeschool him then? And it's all this like conflicting issue all the time. So yeah, I'm sure you've thought about that as well.
Oh man, that you hit the nail on the head on that feeling right there, man.
Yeah.
That's the worst feeling in the world. Is like you're just caught in between two very, very important things, and there's one right immediately in front of you, and so therefore it has your emotion and attention and your eyesight. But there's something in the future that is so grand, and you could achieve it if only you put in the time right now. And I think that's forever going to be an issue. I remember when just before my son was born, I took a second job. So I was working already full time, and I took a second job in the morning working at a cafe. So I'd go there for like 5 a.m. and work until like 10, and then I'd go home, get changed, then jump on the train to get to my full-time job and work that until like 7 or something, and then come home. So it was like ridiculous, and I did it for like maybe 4 or 5 months just so I could make a bit of extra income before my son was born. And when I was stopping to work, which is basically when my son was born, the manager, he sat down with me, and I told him, okay, I need to leave now because my son's born now. This is all I came here for, basically. And he was like, well, when I was your age and I had children, I was working your hours, right? So why are you gonna stop? And it kind of, and he was sort of like he was Muslim, but he was like sort of South Asian, a lot more cultural, brought up in Pakistan, and then moved over here. And I could immediately sense like where that was coming from. That was like as a father, your main responsibility is to provide it. You don't really need to do anything else. And obviously, I get the whole provision aspect of it. That's true. But everything else is still there, and you still have to make time for that. And he was basically saying, like, no, give up all your time in order to create the provisions. But if you're giving up all your time to create the provisions and you're never even there for your children in their younger years, how are you ever going to expect to have a bond with them when they're older? And
Absolutely.
when you read all of these stories about successful people, they always say that they regret not spending enough time with their children. And when you speak to adults, and they speak about their fathers, they always say things like, I wish we had more time with him, or he was there. These are like some of the biggest regrets that you see in people's lives, is about the time that they
Yeah.
spent with their father.
Yeah.
And so I kind of reel myself back when I'm taking a lot of time out to build things, and I try to give my children a lot more attention. I do my best to kind of manage my time, and I think I'm going to go a lot more slowly compared to other people when it comes to building a stream of income, but I don't think I'm going to regret it, because I know that I'm using that time wisely and spending it with my children.
Yeah, the intention alone could put a lot of barakah in the time that you do put in, inshallah. So I remember Ustad Abdurrahman on this same topic of fatherhood and stuff. Again, like the actual successful people, because Shoayb, you said the successful people, I guess you mean like rich people and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like the actual successful people, like Ustad Abdurrahman was mentioning, he said we used to, in the morning, we had to, for example, go to school at 8 o'clock. He said, my dad, he would wake us up 1 hour early compared to whatever we need, let's say 6:30. 6:30 to 7:30, he would just teach us and discuss with us. My mum's making breakfast, he's doing that. So 1 hour in the morning, he'd wake up early just to do that. Then when we come from school, another, like, I can't remember, half an hour or something like that, yeah? So he's like, that's what he remembered from his dad, And you can imagine, I think his dad also sent him to Somalia to study as well. So again, that's huge influence. Like, look at him now, like how obsessed he is with his education, his learning, and even though I believe he was talking about the UK, he was going to school in the UK, but obviously he didn't have that, he didn't end up with the negative influence. In fact, he had a great influence from the other side. So the father can make a huge role, or just parents, in general, that time can make a big difference, man. Big difference.
I think that's one of the, sorry, Muhammad, I think that's one of the like main passions behind my whole, like, speaking about fatherhood, doing this dadhood stuff, is like, I want to make sure that young fathers understand spending time with your children is very, very important. And I think that obviously comes from me feeling like I didn't have that with not growing up with my father. But
doesn't make it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Even putting that experience to the side, it's just, there's so many advantages to making sure that fathers do spend time with their children, not just within the relationship between that child and that father itself, but society wise, across.
Absolutely.
It has such a big impact. You find that the studies show that those who had no father or absent fathers in their life are likely to fall into things like mental health issues, things like addictions, things like a number of different things.
Crime, basically,
coming to my head. Crime, and just social ills and destroying your own soul, basically. And having that father there and being present, even if it's only a small amount of time, but that time is used wisely, like that 1 hour before school, like you mentioned, from Ustad Abdurrahman's father, can have a very, very big impact into the future of that child.
And one thing that, like, a big realization, I mean, actually, I'll tell you, because I heard two guys now talking about this in different places and stuff. One was talking about the fact, like, he doesn't even really know, like, if he wants to get married. Like, he's just like, yeah, it just seems like stressful and this and that and blah, 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 right? The other guy, I think he was married, but he's saying, like, I'm scared to have kids. Yeah. And I'm mentioning these two things together because I feel like the perspective is not the right perspective as a Muslim. I was like, can you imagine having kids? It's like the biggest sadaqah jariyah you can ever do. Right? If you just think of it from, obviously, yani, it's natural we look at what's beneficial to us, yeah? If our goal is the akhirah, success in the akhirah, We're looking for deeds, we're looking for sadaqah, we're looking for sadaqah jariyah, yeah? Like parenting is huge in that way. It's huge in that way. And from what I understand, it's an area where every added minute or hour you put into it, you actually do get results. It's not like there's an area of diminishing returns kind of thing. And so that is an area, that's a way to look at it. Like this for my akhirah as well. Like, come on. And in my book, I kind of try and summarize the role of the man in three areas. It's like pray, provide, and protect. Yes.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah?
Jeez.
Pray, provide, and protect. Providing is not just money. Providing is providing education, providing wisdom, providing time, providing kind of even teaching them how to think or whatever, yani. This is also provision, it's also provision. And it might not be like the mum might be giving them 5 hours of focused attention. You might only be able to give 1, but don't belittle that 1 hour and don't like think that it's useless in a way. Like it's useful.
Yeah, and you have to make sure you're setting up boundaries as well. Like if there are, I'm very bad at this, to be honest, and I'm still working on it. But if there are things that are eating away at your time, you have to make sure you're setting boundaries, man. Like, like just today at work, speaking to one brother, and he was saying he said why did you come in so late today? I said, well, I'm working late today, so I'm gonna come in a bit later, And he was like, well, I've been here since the morning, and I'm gonna finish late. And I said, well,
good for you, mate.
I said, good for you, but my family are more important to me than work. And he said, well, I really like working at this company. And I said, yeah, the company is great, but what matters to me more in life is making sure that I'm spending that time with my family. And so you find that there are people out there that don't have these type of boundaries, and I do struggle with it. It's not to say that in that example, I showed him I have a boundary, but there are times when I can't say no to things when I should say no to them.
Yes.
But if you're telling me that you do not have enough time for your children, it's likely because you're not setting up the right boundaries in order to make sure that you do that.
Probably, yeah. That's why there's also why there's a lock on this door behind me. because I have to also have the boundary in terms of what's work time and what's not work time. Otherwise, I won't get anything done, And, I feel like if, let's say I've got just, for example, 3 hours of spare time in a day, I might spend one of those hours on something that's not work related, but then I know that there's the 2 hours for the kids, kind of thing. So it's about deciding what your ratios are and then trying to stick to it, I think.
It's a societal trap, isn't it? I've got a principle at work where if I ever have to work overtime, we have a choice whether you can get extra pay or extra time as recompense. I always go for time, always. So that I'd rather get the time back, take more time off with my family or whatever, than get extra money, because then I'll just I lose out regardless. So yeah. No, absolutely. I was going to say earlier, you speak about time, you speak all this thing. I can't help but always go back to this. But where is it?
I feel like you're going to bring us some Ryan Holiday quote.
Oh, I wish. No, I'm going to bring in a quote from my father, actually.
Even better.
Wow. Even better. No, so, one of the last things my dad texts me, and I think it's always, it just hits me deep because...
you need to turn these into graphics, man.
I did share this one, but I'll share it again because I think it's just relevant. Where he said, I can't remember what he told me, but he said, you make sure you do that for your kids, whatever it was, some sort of advice. And then I said, I'll do my best. And then he goes, I haven't even had time with you. And I said, I know, I'm sorry. And he goes, my life flew by me and I didn't realize now it's too late. And that will never, I will never be able to forget that, him sending me that, And yes, I didn't spend as much time as I wanted to. In fact, for a good 10 years or so, he was in Tunisia and stuff. He was coming back and forth. But we had all these complexes and all this baggage and all this nonsense, that did actually, obviously I mentioned before, melt away when he got ill. But I will never forget him sharing his regret that not spending enough time with me. And I think that's why, like you guys have rightfully said, I don't want my son to feel like that. I don't want my son to have that. But all my kids, I don't want them to have that fixation or that complex, or dad wasn't here, or dad was always working. In fact, you put a little, Shoayb, you put a little video together about some book, didn't you? I shared that with my missus about, daddy's always working. It's a societal trap. We've got bills to pay, we've got all this stuff to do. And some people I don't know. I don't think every guy is worried about that. I don't think every guy is too like, oh, what's my kids gonna think about me not spending time with him? I think some guys are just like, yeah, I'm gonna put my food on the table and that's it. I'm not really too worried about anything else. But for others, especially myself, bro, I've got that complex, man. I'd rather just, if everything is bare minimum and I can still spend time with my kids, then I'll choose that every single time.
Different people
Yeah.
have different priorities, like depending on the situation and even their stage in life. Like my brother was saying this to me. Like, he's younger than me. He's like, look, he's like, he works a lot. He doesn't have kids or anything, but he works a lot. And he's like, yeah, like that's what your youth is for. I'm like, yeah, damn straight. Work 12, 14 hours. Do it. Do it.
I do reflect upon like what are we passing down to our children, and when we're spending so many so many hours at work, are we passing down that your life should be about work, or when we've got time with them and the type of things we're doing in front of them, is that what we're teaching them, that they like subconsciously, is that what we're passing down to them?
The message.
I do try and I try and think about this. I try and be conscious of it. And it's hard to be conscious of it all the time because you're kind of just in the moment, whatever's going on, you're doing it with your child. But I think it's important, like every so often, that father should take a step back and think about like what are they absorbing in that day. Like, okay, they see me go out, they see me come back, they see me pick up this book, they see me pray, they see me interact with this person, they see how I interact with my wife, how I speak over the phone, and like are they absorbing all of these messages and then modeling their behavior based on that? And I was actually speaking to one of my teachers about this, and he was saying like a lot of Muslims, because of particularly in like the West or the UK, because the situation that we're in, where maybe our parents were immigrants and didn't have a lot of money, and so the position that we're in society is that we feel the need to build up our money and we feel the need to build up our status in this society until we feel like we're on an equal playing field with our maybe white or indigenous counterparts, that we put a lot of effort in these maybe measurements, which you could say are more dunya measurements of success, rather than looking at the things that as a Muslim we should be. Like, imagine if you were in you were in a Muslim country, or you were born there and you were brought up there. What really would be your focus? Like, are you trying to catch up with those who are seen as to be more accepted in society? Are you trying to catch up with those who are more economically well off? Like, what are the things that you would actually be spending your time focusing on? And he was saying that ideally in the West, in Britain, in the UK, as Muslims who are maybe first, second generation, actually our focus, like, he's not putting down the fact of working and making money and building yourself. We're saying actually our focus should be, it's going to sound weird, but the Arabic language. He was saying it should actually be the Arabic language above all else. And the reason why he was saying this, and he actually there's another scholar that qualified this a couple of years ago. You had Mukhtar al-Shinqiti, one of the scholars from Mauritania. He came over to do a tour in the UK, and he's very familiar with the scholars in the UK, and he speaks to them about the situation of the Muslims here. And he gave them somebody asked him in one of these tours at the masjid, he said, what advice do you give to the Muslims? And he said, above all else, focus on the Arabic language. And so the reason what the Sheikh was saying, why he was qualifying all of this, was that if you look at the Muslims who were successful years and years ago in Muslim lands, in Muslim countries and whatnot, they already had the Arabic language, and so they had access to so much more material. They had access, number one, to the Quran, they had access to the Hadith, and then they had access to other literature that would help define themselves and define their identity and build themselves up and give them other measurements of success. And he was saying over here, like, as a Muslim, your basic requirement is to be able to connect with the Quran, to be able to connect with the Sunnah. And if you don't have access to the Arabic language and you're not passing that down to your children, then how many generations are going to be going past living over here where that's not our primary concern, and that's not what we are building our identity and our success upon. Rather, what we're focusing on is our money and our status amongst the people here. how long is that really going to last? And where are we going to end up if we don't have access to the Arabic language? So I thought it was really, really interesting, and it really motivated me to make sure I'm learning a lot more Arabic. Like, alhamdulillah, I'm in my journey at the moment. But it really motivated me because it made a lot of sense to me. Like, if you think about it, generations from now, you might have Muslims that are very rich. You might have Muslims who have maybe fought against Islamophobia and got rights to the Muslims here in this country. You might have Muslims who are politicians, are decision makers. You might have Muslims that are the heads of law firms and whatnot and all sorts of things. But if those Muslims do not have the basics of the Arabic language, and they've lost a huge part of their connection with their faith and a huge part of the connection with their ancestry as well. And ancestry for Muslims isn't about ethnicity and nationality. It's about knowledge and the deen and what gets passed down. And you're losing a lot of that. And people will say, well, you've got translations, but I think you guys had an episode with Musa Adnan before where he spoke about this point, that it's not enough to have these translations. And I think you guys mentioned on like a podcast did about representation and stuff, where you talked about reading Arabic literature in order to access your own sort of history and your own getting representation in that way. And I think the Arabic language just opens the doors for so many things for future generations, and that's what I would want to pass over to my child.
Yeah, and language is identity as well, right? And the thing that connects Muslims language-wise is Arabic, really, you know. I always remember, like, this always sticks with me. I don't know if I mentioned it before. Often when I'm in airports, I go to the prayer room and I see Tablighis, yeah? I know they're Tablighis just because of how they're dressed or whatever, but also because they always speak Arabic, man. Like, no matter where they're from in the world, they tend to know some Arabic. And then we connect through that language, that common language. And obviously the fact that we're Muslims, but it's like, yeah, we can actually speak, right? Whether it's in France or Saudi or UK, whatever, you know? So yeah, language is more than just even accessing books, even though that is a big thing. And literature on its own, it carries cultural kind of resources, if you like. So yeah, by reading a book written in Arabic by someone maybe who's not from the West, they're going to have a completely different way of viewing the world. And that's what Muslims, I feel, need more than ever, is like to view the world in a way that a Muslim should view the world, not through the lens of feeling inferior to, you know, people in the UK or whatever, you know, which is often an issue.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the times we want to build up our status in this country, whether that's through money or whether that's through rights and whatnot, in order, because we think in order that our children can be more safeguarded. And I think that obviously does have an aspect of truth to it.
Yeah.
But the real safeguarding of your children is going to come with you passing down knowledge of the deen to them, your akhlaq to them, and the basis to this, like I mentioned, is a big part of it is the Arabic language. If you're passing those things down, they can then carry on that fight that you thought you could have achieved while you were alive. Like if you're trying to fight and be active against Islamophobia in your life, if you just focused on the things that your children need, once they've got that foundation and they don't need to spend the time to be able to build that because you've already passed it down to them, they can actually successfully carry on that work of building their finance, building their rights, building their political institutes, whatever it is that you want them to do.
Interesting.
But you're trying to like quickly pass the buck. You're trying to get past that because you want that instant feeling of I did it, or I want to see the results. And the Prophet ﷺ, he was never like that. Like when the companions, they were being tortured so much, it was at a point where they never used to complain to him about the torture, but it became so much that they came and they complained to him and they said, you know, Ya Rasulullah, when is the help of Allah gonna come? Like, can you make dua to Allah to help us? And he says, there were people that came before you that a hot comb was dragged over their body and ripped off their skin, and they were still patient with it. That holes were dug and they were thrown into it, and they were still patient with it. And he says this. He says, "You people are so hasty." And then in another rawaya, the narrator describes that he said this, and a vein was popping out of his head, and he was red in the face. So meaning he was so angry at the fact that the companions do not understand this point, that you don't just skip ahead for the success. You take your time in making sure that you're building things in the order that Allah wants you to build it, and then you will get the success after. Like, don't think, if I tackle Islamophobia today, therefore I'm going to get all of my masajid, and I'm going to get the Arabic language, and I'm going to get the Quran, and I'm going to get everything, and my children are going to have secure faith. No, you do what Allah has told you. He told you to secure your iman, secure the knowledge, implement it, have good akhlaq, and those things are going to come. And your children may be, or their children may be, the people who are so solid in their deen that they can actually confidently go out and acquire those things of tackling Islamophobia and building finances and whatnot. I'm quite passionate about that.
Multi-generational kind of approach, long-term approach. Like, you could call that the Jewish approach, the smart approach. Ooh. Definitely, bro. I was thinking, you know, by the way, I don't want it to sound like you can't make good money and give your kids time. Obviously, it's not necessarily like that. But also, what is a more rare resource if you really think about it? Money to fund any kind of organizations like you're talking about, or good people to either work in those organizations or volunteer for them. I think the people is harder to come by, you know, especially people who are grounded and everything. Like, if you raise your kids not to really, you know, maybe they're Muslim, but they're not that passionate about any Muslim causes or anything, then they're just going to go and work for this bank or this software company or whatever. They're not going to be motivated and have that drive to work for whatever organization that's fighting for Muslims' rights or whatever, you know. So the people, what they call it, human capital is rarer than financial capital.
100%. Sorry, Muhammad, I feel like I'm taking the mic away from you so much.
No.
He always does this. Yeah. When we have a guest, he doesn't talk.
I'm listening, bro. I keep forgetting. But no, what I was going to say is, like, tests are inevitable. And that's what we always have to remember.
What's
can't
inevitable,
have
sorry?
Tests. So your child, like, we try and make this testless environment for the child. So, we need to get rid of this outside influence and this outside influence and this outside influence. You know, but actually the tests that will come to the child will be inevitable. You know, I remember speaking to my wife once, and she turned to me and goes, "Oh, I'm absolutely terrified. I can't believe one day that our son's going to may engage in minor or major sins." Like, the thought of your son sinning is so. But it's like, well, I had to rationalize it. I was like, hey, listen, we've all sinned, and he's going to sin as well, and you have to be prepared for that. And actually, there is no heaven on earth. You can't create this heaven, this utopia, this, like you said, have all my massages and all my rights, and wherever I am, it's going to be perfect, etc. Because it wouldn't be the dunya anymore. It's that internal fortress that you need to try and solidify. Those habitual sort of acts of worship that become so ingrained and normalized that actually any moment without them is just strange and peculiar. Such as prayer, for example. You know, there's one of the biggest things is, like, I want prayer to be such a fundamental thing that no matter what level of iman the kid's going to have, high and low, up and down, wherever they are on the planet, it's like, I need to do that. Like, that has to be a thing. You see it. I'm sure you've met Muslims who in their low iman stages, like, they normally pray, but in their low iman, they're missing prayers like left, right, and center, right? And that is such a no-no. Like, that's a red line that we can't do. That these are the fundamental things that we need to instill in our children, because the world is always going to be the world. There's always going to be tests, like you said. There's people of the past that had hot combs and taking their skin away and all sorts of torture and stuff. And na'udhu billah min dhalik for our children. But our children will be adults, just like we see adults all over the world going through all sorts of troubles. Our kids aren't kids forever, and one day they'll be men like us and women like us, and they'll have their own tests and their own trials. You hear about the times where the Dajjal will come, and the fitna of that, which is yet to reach us. Could be your kids, could be our kids' kids. 1 minute they're running around playing and goo goo gaga, and next minute they're grown adults dealing with that fitna. And if I was too busy focused on trying to purify the world and not purify them, then what have I achieved? When the inevitable is, no matter what I do to the world, Allah will still test them. No matter what I do to the world.
I'm very, very passionate about that same point, Muhammad, because for 4 years I worked in an organization like that, which is set out to tackle Islamophobia. And by the end of those 4 years, I became disillusioned with their approach to things, because their argument is, if we tackle Islamophobia, then we can have everything else. So they're basically saying, oh, Muslims, go out there, put your time and your effort and your energy into tackling Islamophobia. And if we do that, then we will have our masajid, we will have our Islamic schools, we will have our sisters won't be afraid to walk outside of their homes, and our brothers will grow their beards, and we will get enough jobs and all this kind of stuff, right? So they linked basically the success of Muslims to tackling this particular thing. Now, okay, they have a point in certain areas, but I don't think that applies 100%, because what Muhammad is saying, the most important thing is that internal thing that you build, your internal iman. Why? If we look at, for example, Ayyub alayhi salam, when everything was taken away from him, what did he have left? He had his internal iman, and that's what gave him success. If you look at Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, when he is imprisoned, what does he say? That it doesn't matter if you imprison me, that would be a seclusion between me and my Lord. And he mentions other things. If you look at, there's so many different examples of this, where basically everything is taken away from you, you're under so much oppression, but what matters at the end of the day is what is built up internally. So point being is that if we don't build that internal connection with Allah, we're not going to get far. Also, if you look at the example of Asiya, she lives in the belly of the beast, like right there next to Fir'aun. She's in the same bed as him, essentially, right? She's his wife, and yet no matter what happened in her environment, she still had a connection with Allah. But if you look on the other side, look at Nuh alayhi salam's son. He had the best environment. He had his father was a prophet, you know, and his father was always looking out for him, always asking him to turn towards Allah, inviting him to come and join him onto the ark. Yet what happened to his son? His son ended up not believing and ended up becoming being destroyed by the waves. So it's not really about your environment. You could have the best environment, you could have the worst environment. It's about what's going on internally. And then once that internal thing is strong, you then going out to fix the environment can be a bonus, can help. But it doesn't mean that you have to rely upon the environment being the best thing and you getting all of your rights. Like, when did that become a thing for Muslims? That Muslims want all of their rights? Like, when did the Prophet ﷺ always, like, when in Mecca, when he was offered all of these opportunities for fame and whatnot and political power, why did he turn them down? It was never him saying that we always have to take our rights back. It was always about, you know, what's our connection with Allah, what's our internal status. And once we have that, then you look at what happened in the era of Medina. Once they built themselves, look what happened after that. So you have to build yourself first, and then you can get that success afterwards. And because of those 4 years that I was in that kind of activism, you know, becoming disillusioned with it. Once I've left it now, I try and advise people who get involved in it, like, okay, do it. I'm not saying that a company and that organization shouldn't exist and that we shouldn't have things that are helping us take away these issues. And, you know, there's very important aspects to it, like Muhammad was mentioning, that his that thing where he was called in and they're saying guns and this, that, whatnot. That's obviously an aspect of Islamophobia that needs to be sorted out, and it has a very real impact on families. But I'm just saying, don't make your whole life, your whole iman, your whole energy is based upon, if we get this activism right, then everything else is going to be sorted out.
Yeah. Shoayb, what have you interviewed a lot of dads, right, on your podcast? So what are some things you've just learned, or what are like patterns you've seen, or anything interesting to share with us?
Well, that's a good question, man. I should really reflect. I've done about like 20 odd episodes and I haven't really gone back and made any reflections for me. Off the top of my head, some of the things that I have learned is being very aware about yourself. Like, that's something that I've learned from all the different fathers, is that a lot of them kind of understand what their flaws are and what their strengths are, and then they know what they're supposed to be working on. So it's kind of like that saying of you can't what is it, you can't, something about having an empty cup or something about being a candle or something. Basically, if you burn yourself out, you can't be a light.
The whole oxygen mask thing.
All of that kind of stuff. There's all these sayings. I can't remember them. But basically, you need to make sure that you are kind of working on yourself in order to make sure if you want to have a successful relationship with your children. And that came across with like different students of knowledge that I've interviewed, or just other kind of general brothers, friends, etc. that I've interviewed, Muhammad that I've interviewed as well. What kind of came across was like, I need to make sure I'm working on myself. And maybe a lot of these people, they hadn't 100% worked and like got to a level where they're happy with themselves yet. Like most recently, I was speaking to a brother about he lost so much weight. And one of the reasons his biggest reason for losing weight and working on himself was because he wanted to be there and do things for his children. And because of the weight that he had, he wasn't able to do things like take them to the park and run around with them and whatnot.
Yeah.
So that was like one aspect of the physical aspect of taking care of yourself so that you can be there for your children. But there were other people who were basically saying like, I need to work on my relationship with the Quran so I can pass that over to my children. Other people were saying like, I need to work on my own emotions. And like me, myself, I need to work a lot on my controlling my anger and things like that so that I can make sure I'm there for my children. So I think that's like, in summary, not having thought about it too much, I learned that from a lot of people is working on yourself so that you can have a proper bond with your children.
What have you guys thought about this? I'm sure this is something a lot of us think about. You want your kids to like memorize the Quran and you haven't memorized the Quran.
Yeah. I think about that every time I have a lesson with my sheikh. I'm like, oh my gosh, is this another lesson where I haven't properly memorized the surah? How am I supposed to teach my child this surah? That happens to me a lot.
Yeah, man, it's tricky. I tell myself like, well, I didn't start memorizing when I was young, so that's my excuse. So I need to start them young, But yeah.
I think it's a journey for all of us. Maybe your kid can relate to you more.
What do you mean by that?
As in, like, if you the goal is attainable, meaning that it's not something so far away. Like, oh, how am I ever going to be like Dad? He's memorized the whole Quran. He does this and he does that, and there's that pressure. You'll be more understanding of his struggle. He'll be more realistic with the journey, and it's the journey ultimately. I always say that to myself. Like, listen, Allah has given us the mercy of being able to attain a wide range of various good deeds, and. Just because you might not have Quran memorized doesn't mean there isn't like a million other things that you could do as well to attain good deeds. You could fill your whole day up with charity, or being good to the neighbor, or removing things from a pathway, etc., 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 etc. Yeah, so I know there's a priority on certain deeds, and I know there's an emphasis on certain deeds, but as long as those deeds are being done, no matter what they are, that's the important thing. I think that's what rationalizes it for me. So,
I guess if I'm on the journey as well.
Yeah,
I should be memorizing alongside, my kids, perhaps.
That could be it. Yeah, that could be it. No doubt.
Yeah.
I know a story that's happened where a father and a daughter, I think, graduated in their hifth at the same time, because they started at the same time, basically. It's quite beautiful. It's good. I mean, obviously, I don't think anybody should walk away thinking that, okay, I have time. Like, of course, there's a lot of stories of people memorizing when they're older, but the matter of the fact is, the older you get, the harder it's going to become. So if you want to do it, don't wait for a certain moment. Just start working on it.
Yeah. What do you think about, like, I think you had kids when you were young, right, Shoayb? I mean, you're still young now and you had 2 already, mashallah, right?
Alhamdulillah. I don't think I'm that much younger than you guys, am I?
I don't know. But I know when you had your first child, you were what, 24? 5?
No, less than that. I was 22.
There you go. Much younger than me when I had mine. What do you think about, like, a good age to have your first child? Like, is there a good one, or?
Oh, it's a good question, man. I think for me, I was okay with having my child that early because I had already had it in my head from when I was like 18 that by the time I finish university, I'm gonna get married. I'm gonna start a family, and I wanted to always be a young father. And for me, it was kind of like I was ready because I had already kind of planned my vision out and had already started thinking about what I want to do with my life, and a big part of that was becoming a father, and I didn't really want to waste time in that. I didn't see myself like traveling and this and that and whatnot in my early 20s. For me, it was like, let's start family, let's start building as early as possible. So for me, it was a good time. I don't I don't think I'd recommend it for everyone, because maybe like a good thing is like once you get married is to have, you know, a good maybe 6 months, a year of getting to know your spouse so that you know you can actually survive in this relationship even when children come into it. Obviously, when the child comes, the relationship changes anyway, so you can't really predict everything about how you're going to be as a couple when the child comes in. But it's obviously important, you're two people that have never known each other prior to marriage, and now you got married, you're gonna create this whole new life. Like, don't bring a child into it straight away. Make sure you guys are good with each other. That's what I would say. But at the same time, I wouldn't delay it that much. I would make sure that like you're not taking so many years, because number one, you're just delaying a lot of good deeds that you could gain. Number two, a lot of times people say I'm delaying children because I need to work on various aspects of myself. And I already mentioned earlier, of course, working on yourself is very important. But there's a big aspect of yourself that you're not going to know until your son or your daughter is born.
Sure.
And put yourself in that situation earlier rather than later, so you can actually mold yourself and get ready for that. The third thing I would say is not leaving it too long, because the older that you and your wife get, the more settled you're going to become in your ways, and you're not going to be able to mold to each other as much. And when the child comes, obviously a lot of things change, and that's going to create a lot of difficulties between you two if you aren't able to mold with each other, because you've left it so long, and you've just become sort of rigid in the ways that you guys are as a couple.
Yeah, just how when people like delay getting married, they get more in their ways. The same would happen for that. I was thinking the exact same thing, yeah. And sometimes people have kids to try and improve their relationship, but I feel like it would actually put stress on it more, actually.
Yeah.
Like having kids is more like hopefully you're trying to build on top of a solid foundation rather than fixing a foundation, kind of thing. But yeah, what about one of the final points, maybe, like, you know, this brother that I was listening to, he was saying like this fear of having kids, and some people saying, I don't even know if I want to have kids. I'm hearing these people saying, yeah, you know, I'm trying to get married, and sisters saying, yeah, I don't know if I really want kids. Like having kids was never something in question, right? It was like, if anything, it's like a blessing. Wow, I can have a kid, right? Is that like a trend, do you think? Or because I know obviously amongst non-Muslims in the West, especially, it's like even China and stuff, they kind of see kids sometimes, some people, yani, they're seeing it as a burden, or they'd rather just have a dog or whatever, and this and that. They think a lot about the money aspects of it. Not everyone, but there is a segment like that. And I just felt maybe that's trickling into some Muslims. Like, is that a trend, you think, or not really? Or
well, I just came across an Instagram page on like when you get suggested certain things, and it said no strings nikah. And I was like, what the hell is that? So I clicked on it, and it's new, like it doesn't have many followers, and they've got a website there. So I clicked on the website, and it basically said, are you somebody who is you've already done the marriage thing, you've already done the kids thing, you're now single, and you can't be bothered with all the cooking and the cleaning. This is literally how it says it, with the cooking and the cleaning and the responsibilities of a relationship. You just want the romance, you just want the going out together and being with each other and all that kind of stuff. Then sign up and we can basically get a nikah done for you on that kind of level. And it got me thinking, like, do people really go into marriage with the intention that they don't want to build a family, that they don't want to have kids, and they just want to basically have like a girlfriend boyfriend relationship? For me, that's quite foreign. Like, I don't know if that's a common thing, but I can't imagine that you would put yourself through the process of trying to find a spouse, and not think that you're going to be with this person for life, and not think that you're going to be building a family with this person. Like, you're literally just going to be with this person because of maybe just some sort of lustful desires and whatnot. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, you just want to fulfill those desires through some sort of halal alternative, right? And marriage is supposed to be something much deeper than that. Like, I always tell people that marriage is the building block of a family, and a family is the building block of a society, and a good society is the building block of the ummah. And then once
Absolutely.
you've got a good ummah, then inshallah, mankind is moving towards the right direction. And if you're not going to be contributing to that, and you're just a couple for the sake of being a couple, like, okay, do your thing, but I really don't think that that should be promoted as that is how marriages should be. I really think that the purpose to a marriage is obviously you find sakina in your spouse and you're able to fulfill your desires in a halal way, but it's way beyond that, is the whole aspect of building a family. And quite early into our marriage, me and my wife sort of realized that a lot of these date nights and a lot of these kind of more romantic things can become sort of nothing if you're not working towards building something bigger than that. They'll just start to kind of wither away and just become meaningless. But once you're building something bigger than that, when you do have a date night, you do have some romance, it actually helps you build your marriage, and it actually helps you connect with your spouse a lot more.
Yeah, I came across that as well.
Really?
I could do a whole rant on that. No comment.
Bro, that stuff didn't get advertised to me, so I don't know why the algorithm is advertising it to you.
Now, me and Muhammad, we often talk about this, right? Like, marriage in your head, marriage equals family, making a family, right? But that's not always the case with some people's thinking, and I think that's probably not a good thing.
If you ain't doing
where
it,
do
bro.
you think that comes from? Because I can't fathom it. Like when I was young and I was thinking about marriage, like, yeah, a big aspect to it when you're a young man is like being able to fulfill your desires. Okay, cool. But you also, as a man, have this innate desire to be able to have a progeny and to have children,
Legacy,
and
yeah.
to have a legacy. That's a big aspect
Yeah.
for a man,
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
Muslim, any man. Literally, you don't have to be Muslim, man. That's
Well,
just
now,
innate.
bro, you
That's
can
big
have a
part.
legacy on your Instagram account, bro. That's the legacy.
Content creation, bro.
I don't know. I think it's quite standard. Like, I'm not surprised by it, because when I look at non-Muslim Western society, I see that. I actually notice differences when I go from like Turkey to the UK or wherever to the UK. I see more individualism. I actually observe it, right? And the no kids kind of setup, that is more, you could say, desires-wise, short-term enjoyment-wise, it's better, right? And so that's what people, I think, are optimizing for. It's like, okay, how can we just have the best of the dunya, now, and just have everything we want now, have the flexibility to travel, even have probably what they're thinking of, the flexibility to separate with no issues, right? No kids, right? They're thinking of all these things, I think. And and of course, like, perhaps more and more marriages are ending sooner, and therefore it's like people are thinking now, I'm not gonna have one wife in my life, I'm gonna have 3, 4 in my lifetime, yani. So they're not committing as much as they used to, perhaps. All these dynamics, I think, are happening, and some of that is leaching into Muslims, where they're thinking like, I'm young, I want to get married, but I want to travel, I want to enjoy this, I want to keep a lot of my old lifestyle. And I think we're probably, alhamdulillah, we're blessed that we inherited this idea that marriage equals family, because it's not a given these days, perhaps.
Likewise, we haven't been through the trauma or whatever of some people where, like you said, we've already had my kids and I've already been married before, and I don't want to make a fuss, and all I want is the stuff that I'm missing out on, and I don't want to go through the pain and the stress of what I'd already been through again. Like, alhamdulillah, if we'd gone through some other scenario and we were divorced and we were messed up and whatever,
or even our parents were divorced, maybe,
stuff like that. But alhamdulillah, we haven't been in that position. So there is a bit of privilege coming out there, but at the same time, don't lose sight of what the focus is.
Yeah.
But for
Anyway,
me,
bro.
having divorced parents and stuff, for me, it pushed me further to build my own family and to wrong any rights that I felt like had happened in my life.
Yeah, man.
Right
It's
any
like,
wrong, sorry.
Yeah, you get that. Sometimes people go either way. They could go either way. Like my dad, for example, is highly educated. I'm highly educated, yeah? But I'm not that into education for my son, right? So I'm kind of going the other way,
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, last question, Shoayb.
Um,
How many kids is the best number of kids?
ooh.
The best.
I've always told my wife that I wanted 5, but we're now currently settling on 3 as an ideal. Obviously, now that we've had 2, we're like, oh, 5, that's a bit mad.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like we're not sort of strictly family planning. Like there's an aspect of family planning in order to make sure that we're not running ourselves into the ground and becoming overstressed. So we're sort of timing things out.
Yeah.
But it's not like a strict family planning that we have to have this many children and then there's a cutoff. And children are a blessing, and you shouldn't. I don't think it's. I'm not going to say a fatwa on it, but I don't think it's Islamically the best thing to say that I'm going to completely cut myself off of the blessing of children. So I think the more that come, amazing, but we're looking at between that 3 to 5 number as like a practical reality, you could say.
Yeah. That's good, bro. I think there's a lot of benefits for the kids in having more siblings, large families. People say that, you can't raise them properly if you have a lot of them, you can't give them... I don't really agree with that. I think more is good. They learn from each other, actually. They socialize with each other. They help each other out. They help the parents out if you raise them right, that is. So, yeah. I think for me, like 4 or more is always a good kind of thing. So...
Yeah, my wife says that because she came from a smaller family, and when she sees my family, which is quite a big family, she's always like, I wish I had that, and I want to make sure our kids have that and stuff. So I think the big family is always nice.
Are you sharing your screen, Muhammad?
Yeah.
You want me to put it up?
Yeah.
What is this?
Just to answer your question.
Describe what you're seeing.
Did you make that right now whilst we were speaking?
No, I made it a while ago for another joke, but I found it again. I thought it'd be relevant.
Wait, is this this is a movie, Daddy Daycare? Okay.
Yeah,
Which actor is it?
Face onto it. I think it's Eddie
Ice
Murphy.
Cube. Oh, okay.
No, Eddie Murphy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 kids on top of him there.
This is you in the future, yeah?
Yeah, and a pet dog.
Oh,
Why not?
with or without the dog?
No, that was my answer to the question, bro. Can't stop, won't stop. Sounds like, but yeah. All right.
Let me add you all. Okay. Cool, man. Jazakallah khair, Shoayb, for having us, for you coming on. I enjoyed this, man. I think we're all like, this is a point of interest for us, so that generates a good conversation, man. May Allah bless your kids and any future kids and all of our families, oh Allah, and give us dhurriya salihah.
Jazakallah khair for having me on, boys. It was enjoyable. I have a lot of work to do now. I took time out of work for this, but I would do it again. I would definitely do it again if you guys have another time to bring me on, inshallah.
Yes, and we'll put a link to your podcast in the description, of course.
Jazakallah khair.
Okay, subhanakallahumma bihamdik, shadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Mindhouspodcast.com as well if you want to contact us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.